What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. The pressure continues to mount on Sony after their announcement to discontinue physical media production January 2028. And while we are even seeing large mainstream outlets make whole reports on this situation, we're even starting to see some of Sony's own studios put out statements regarding physical media on some of their releases, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft, who has their own story brewing for this week when it comes to physical media, kind of how they'll approach next generation when it comes to physical Xbox discs that are out there in the wild. And we have Nintendo, who had their own physical release recently, and it went absolutely crazy, which does, of course, bring up the question around Nintendo and their own future for physical media. But we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Also, we are on Spotify now. Video, audio, the whole thing. So we're trying to grow there as well. So if you want to check it out there, you can. It is linked down below in the description. Like, follow, whatever else is going on there. Do appreciate that. And we're going to start today with Palworld, because 1.0 did launch, and wow, did they see a response. Like, we can see this. This is over on SteamDB, giving us an idea of the overall concurrent player count, and they hit nearly 900,000 players. The last 24 hours that I saw was 855,000. Now, their all-time peak is 2.1 million players concurrently on Steam, but 1.0 seems to have done quite a bit for the game. I see people really enjoying it online. I had it on Game Pass. I was thinking about just firing it up again, maybe just do a whole new save file on it to see how it kind of onboards you and stuff, but it seems like the overall quest structure is much better, and I'm just interested in a lot of features because apparently their overall change list that they had to submit to Steam, it exceeded the overall character limit. So there's a lot that has been altered here, but not shocking. Palworld continues to roll along. It also appears that they have more than 40 million players in the game, like overall, that they made that announcement. So big things there for Pocket Pair and Palworld now in 1.0. Also, it looks like another game is being moved out of that crazy September like block of releases. This is a Switch 2 version, and we can see over on Nintendo Life, this is for Hell Is Us. They said they have decided to postpone the release from September 24th to October 8th, so like a bit more than 2 weeks or so there. And they say, we believe it's best for everyone involved, our team and our partners, and for you, the players, to move our release date to a less busy period. Again, that last week of September is absolutely stacked, and I figure we would see some shuffling of the release schedule here as we went along. A lot of that had to do mostly, I thought, with GTA, but now where everyone kind of front-loaded for September and a little bit of October, yeah, you're even here going to see them move around, and this just being a Switch 2 edition, it's not like a big brand new game release, so it's even more crowded for them if they're around big new titles. So there you go. If you're looking forward to Switch 2, Hell Is Us, gonna have to wait another 2 weeks for that one. Oh, and it looks like Ubisoft is seeing some success here with Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. They made this announcement over on their social media account where they say, "Dash my buttons, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced has already passed 2 million copies sold." So that's pretty quick. And they're not even saying like, okay, so sometimes they'll use the terminology players. This is just 2 million copies sold. This was as of July 10th. So I'm sure they've sold even more since then, obviously. I don't know if they're like 3 million or so, or if they'll just continue to do like a running tally of updates after every so many million. I think they're pretty happy with 2 million copies, so I don't think this is like a crazy expensive Assassin's Creed game to make. It is fun though. I am enjoying my time with it. There's been a dust up around the microtransactions, and that's just like Ubisoft's MO. They'll come up with a pretty good game at times, right? And like the just overall structure is fun. It has a good loop to it, but then there's all kinds of microtransactions that you just kind of go, like, why? In this case, it's a lot of cosmetics that add up to more than $80, and then you can unlock, I guess, the location of all the different treasures that you would typically go through the game, find maps, and then locate them from that. So yeah, it's kind of fast-tracking, at least for some of the different treasure hunts that you'd be going on there. But I'm enjoying my time with Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. I mean, it's a remake, remaster of Black Flag, which I think is one of the better Assassin's Creed games. So again, the 2 million copies sold, I think they're pretty happy with that. The microtransactions are really the big sticking point for a lot of people with it right now. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony and the ongoing debacle when it comes to physical media being discontinued, at least the manufacturing of their Blu-ray discs at their manufacturing facility, January 2028. It feels like forever ago now, but it was the beginning of July, and they put out a 3-paragraph blog post and have said nothing since. Still, though, there's been so much discussion around this. There have been so many comments and responses left as Sony has just continued to trudge along here, advertising different games and accessories. And it hasn't gone well in the responses pretty much at all for this entire thing. At least not for Sony, but there has been something that I've noticed with all this going down, where many studios are realizing, hey, if we advertise a physical product, like a game, it actually does pretty well with responses, and the traction on social media is more than usual. And I've seen this, like Mouse PI for Hire had an entire thing where they were showing off a 40 FPS mode for the Switch 2, and they were also showing like physical media and stuff for that with a release. People were excited there. Of course, what we've talked about with Elder Scrolls, like Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered that's coming to the Switch 2, and they talk about a physical cartridge. That did really well on social media. But what about Sony's own first-party studios? Because that feels like it'd be kind of awkward for them to go around advertising that with what we've heard from Sony, like the company there, right, with PlayStation. All right, well, we had Wolverine. Insomniac did put out a tweet a while ago, and this had nothing to do with the July 1st post from Sony, because it was like a week prior, and it seemed to line up more so with the discussion around GTA 6 being a code in the box. They simply wanted to let everyone know, hey, this is actually on a disc. Like, you will get a Blu-ray disc if you buy it at retail. Well, now fast forward post July 1st announcement from Sony, we have this, and this is over on Sony Santa Monica. Of course, they are talking about God of War Lawfare, and they say, see you at San Diego Comic-Con. Join us for our God of War Lawfare panel featuring game director Ariel Lawrence, moderator and head of creative Cory Barlog, and members of the cast for behind-the-scenes stories, details about our new heroes, and more. So we do have San Diego. I mean, it's coming up, they say July 24th here, so a couple of weeks from now we'll have that. And then also information around other Sony products. I saw Wolverine will be there, for example, and a few others. But then in response to this, all right, and this was a pretty quick follow-up. It wasn't something that they sat on for too long. It was like half an hour later. They were like, we can confirm God of War Lawfare will be available on disc. And look at the views, the likes, the responses, everything about this. People are now excited at the prospect of Sony releasing a physical disc, which is kind of sad. But still, more than 54,000 likes, more than 2.5 million views, and a lot of praise. Here's the thing with this situation. God of War Lawfare was always coming on a Blu-ray, and if you think about it, January 2028 is after this game's coming out. Now, we don't have a release date on it. I believe it's coming out first half of 2027, so in a year from now, we'll at least have been talking about playing the game, the whole thing, and we know that Sony said, hey, anything before this date, January 2028, physical media will move along as usual. We're just letting everyone know in advance, this is when we're looking to wind down production significantly for these Blu-ray discs, down to like 10% or something is what they were saying. That way they can continue to do reprints or anything that partners need for previously released games. As we know, many of the discs that are out in circulation are printed on release, and then they kind of go through and restock as needed. So for God of War Lawfare, this was always the plan, but I think it's the response that you're seeing from people, as well as, I mean, them feeling the need to just put this out there. Hey, it is going to be on a disc. And there are people wondering, hold on, are all these studios necessarily on board with the idea of just going fully digital? I think some are, because let's face it, it still comes down to money. Bonuses maybe for studios, as an example of, oh, well, if we sell 1 million copies, and half of them are physical, and it kind of cuts into our bottom line. But hey, if it's all digital, we do get a better cut, and that means we will get maybe better bonuses or opportunities to make another game, because maybe the green light is a little easier when they're not necessarily worried about retail margins and manufacturing. Still, there is something to having your work represented in a physical product that you can order and put up on the shelf. Like if I worked on a game like God of War Lawfare, yeah, I would want a physical copy. I might even take the disc and like the case and get it framed, the whole thing. I mean, it seems like a big accomplishment for anyone who had worked on the game. So I think there is something to that. Physical representation of years and years of hard work for a game like that. So I don't know if this is necessarily indicating, hey, Sony Santa Monica's going rogue and they're against Sony on the decision, but it does make you at least have a bit of pause and wonder how some of these other studios who are obviously very artistic in nature, like, how do they feel about the idea of this all-digital future that Sony's proposing? Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and what could be a pretty big feature they'll be rolling out and at least testing with insiders this week. Now, we can see this is over on good old Twitter X from Brad Rossetti, who is the Xbox and PC gaming at Microsoft Xbox Insider Program Lead. Says Xbox Insiders on console, as you have seen, we pause flighting this week as we prep for week next. So just like this week coming up. Thanks for being patient. The wait is worth the wait, I promise. And this got people kind of raising an eyebrow. It's like, hold on, you're skipping an entire week here, because typically there are updates or the features or things that they do with Xbox Insiders just to test out different things to see if it is ready for prime time and put out there for full retail customers who are not the Insider program. And as this was going on, Jez Corden over at Windows Central did quote tweet this and just say, Positron cometh. Okay, so Positron, we've already talked about this. It's the disk-to-digital program that Microsoft has been testing internally. And once you get to certain milestones with that, and it seems like everything is at least working with some of the limited, we'll say, employees or people you're testing with, you do want to broaden the horizons, you'll say, or at least the test bed, and push it out here. Then the next step would be indeed to Xbox Insiders. And that will give us an idea as to how this is actually going to work. Because one of the big sticking points that Sony will have to figure this out is going to be people who have physical libraries of games, but then going to a generation that will be primarily digital and may not have disk drives at all attached to these systems, like completely, maybe not even an optional disk drive. Well, Microsoft, we believe, is going to be trying to make what's kind of a PC, and then they may have it with OEM developer also coming up with things. Maybe you have like manufacturers like Asus partners, and they try to come up with an Xbox. That's kind of been something that's been pitched. They might not want to put a disk drive in the thing. And if that's the case, and just with PC outright, as we're seeing, they probably want to figure out how to get your physical library moved over, but not taken away from you. And I think that's an important thing to note, because originally the plan was take your games to a Microsoft store, they'll move them over to digital, and then keep the games. Like, to me, that's kind of I don't like that, because they're taking the games out of circulation, but they're also taking the games from you, right? And I don't think it matches up one-to-one. Physical and digital, obviously, because physical you can hand to someone, you can loan it out, you can sell it. Can't do that with a digital copy. But if you could keep your physical copy, but then also attach an entitlement, we'll say, to your account that stays there until you give your game to someone else and they pop it in their system and attach it to their account, removing it from yours, I actually think that's a good idea. It kind of reminds me of, like, if you have a modded system, we'll say, I'm actually working with a PS3 recently for a video, you put your game in, it'll dump the disc to the PS3, and then you just have it there. You don't have to pop the disc in at all. It can stay up there on your shelf. Kind of like that. Less ability, obviously, to pass the disc around to everyone and they can all dump the disc, but you kind of get the idea. There are still some guardrails in effect, as there would sort of need to be for a program like that. But I at least like the idea of what they're proposing here, because also that would play into Xbox Play Anywhere. So if you have, say, the ROG Ally or the handhelds, and it's on Windows, and you can access your Microsoft library, then that would also take your Xbox disc, digitize it, and allow you to play it on your handheld that doesn't have a Blu-ray drive. So these are the things that I think Sony needs to also work out. I don't know if they're going to be able to, because they really haven't said anything other than they're going to stop production of Blu-ray discs January 2028. But this whole Microsoft disc to digital thing, we have to just see how it works in general. So if it does get pushed to Xbox Insiders, I am in the Insider program. I will check it out and report back to you guys exactly how this works, maybe in its own separate video, so stay tuned for that. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo with a physical release that absolutely exploded. I mean, this thing went crazy, way more than I was expecting, but we'll start here with the sales charts. This over in Japan, Famitsu sales charts. And we'll look at install base for him, who has it lined up very nicely here. Rhythm Heaven Groove. 393,378 copies. We'll come back to that here in a moment. And then we have Goemon's Great Gathering, with probably the longest title I've ever seen. I mean, they need 3 lines, it just keeps going. Okay, fine. 60,428 copies. Then we have Tamagotchi Life, Power Pros 2026, Star Fox, Goemon again on the PS5. And then we have Pokemon Pocopia, Mario Kart World, eFootball Kickoff, and Minecraft on the Switch to round out the top 10. Moving over to hardware, Switch 2, 32,797. That is up from the 24,000 units that they sold the previous week. I mean, you can only, I assume, attribute that to something like Rhythm Heaven with the kind of impact it had there on the market. Even though it's a Switch 1 game, there are probably people who are like, okay, fine, I'll get a Switch 2 and Rhythm Heaven and something else, right? That's just kind of the effect it can have on the market. The Switch 2 is right up against the 6 million mark now. Pretty good there for the system, I'd say. Then we have the PS5, 10,913. The Switch 1, 10,788. And the Xbox Series, 730. That's a pretty big jump, actually. I mean, it sold twice as much. I mean, it's still obviously unimpressive compared to the other systems. I'm curious what happened there with the Xbox Series. That's interesting. Now, when compared to some of the previous Rhythm Heaven games, we have Game Data Library who lined it up here for us. Yet significantly had more than double what happened here with the 3DS Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix. And remember, these are all physical copies that would have released in Japan. This is actually pretty nuts, I'd say, for Rhythm Heaven, because with that, along with digital, remember, this is just in Japan, then taking the rest of the world. We're talking millions of copies for a game that I don't think cost Nintendo much at all to make. Obviously, you look at the price point, that kind of reflects it, but then you just gotta look at the game, and you're like, yeah, obviously, this didn't cost as much as Tears of the Kingdom, even as Star Fox or anything like that. So these are the kind of games that Nintendo obviously loves to put out there because it can also help to subsidize maybe a project that didn't pull in a ton of profit. I'm looking at something like Metroid Prime 4. That game, I'm sure, cost a lot of money to make. Don't think it went absolutely crazy in terms of sales, but then you have these kind of games that do pull in a ton of profit for Rhythm Heaven, so incredible stuff. Also, it shows that Nintendo still really likes their physical games when you have a title like this sell nearly 400,000 copies in its first week physically. Yeah, people have discussed the idea of Nintendo moving away from physical games because Sony and Microsoft are clearly signaling they want to at this time going into next generation. I think Nintendo is going to go kicking and screaming away from the retail scene with physical media. Maybe someday file sizes balloon to the point where they need to go all game keycard or something. I'm thinking like 10 years in the future, next generation or something like that. I think they would rather go all game keycard than nothing at all or just like some code in a box, because you could still, I know the game keycard thing, people don't like it. You can still sell it, trade it, whatever, and it is something that you do have a physical presence on store shelves, even in the used category, that, hey, can help people discover franchises they wouldn't either, and as Nintendo likes to do, try to build up a customer more so for life than in the short term. And in our last bit of news, we did have Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and 2 Shadow Drop on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. This was to close out last week, and I was kind of shocked by what I saw, because it's kind of crazy what Activision, Blizzard, Microsoft, and even Sony did here. But so take a look. This is Call of Duty Black Ops 1, and it comes in at a retail price of $40. This is a digital-only game. Now, you can save 50% if you're on PlayStation Plus, so it would be $20. That is until August 6th, so this is not a permanent sale or anything. And then, on top of that, they have the Call of Duty Black Ops Season Pass for $30 more. So, if you don't have, you would want PlayStation Plus. I feel like the only reason you would buy Black Ops is to also play online. That's where you can get most of your value, and probably what people are mostly nostalgic for, but then you would be looking at like $70 or something. So, if you buy it holiday time or something, that's kind of what it'd be. And then also, if you want Black Ops 2, another $40 or $20 right now if you have PlayStation Plus. And then there's a separate Season Pass. Okay, so with that in mind, I thought, oh, well, there'd probably be a lot of really cool stuff they would do to it. 4K, 120 FPS, maybe field of view slider, none of that. It's 1080p. It looks sharper, I will say, because it seems like it is using better upscale or different upscaling than what we've seen with something like the Xbox Series. You could play the 360 version through that, but it's like 600 some odd P, and they're upscale. It's chunky looking there, right? And there's a lot of shimmering. Now, they're still shimmering with the PS5 and PS4 version, less so though. I think the biggest thing here is, despite it being like 1080p, 60 FPS, and no real other additional features, it is like their own server, so they don't have the hacking situation that's going on with the Xbox, which is very unfortunate, because otherwise the games still work well enough if you want to get that nostalgic fix on the Xbox Series. But unfortunately, the lobbies generally have a bunch of hackers that kind of ruin everything. But now with the PS4 and the PS5, whole new server, like everything, and you don't deal with any of that, at least for now. And probably for the foreseeable future. That's like the one massive positive. Otherwise, wow, that is very expensive. And I was looking at that and said, I might be good for now. We'll see if maybe they add some additional features or upgrades as they go along, because guess what? It topped the sales charts. It jumped ahead of GTA 6. And that's kind of the power of nostalgia mixed with Call of Duty. So there we go. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, do you currently have an Xbox One or Xbox Series system equipped with a disk drive, which you will need to be able to do the disc to digital program? 58% say yes, 42% say no. Okay, so more than half of people at least have an Xbox One or Xbox Series laying around that they could technically use if they wanted to. Because remember, with Xbox Play Anywhere, it would also work for PC. So let's say you have made the jump to PC. You're like in on Xbox for a while there. You're like, I'll build a PC. And you still have like physical discs laying around, and some of them work for Xbox Play Anywhere. If you can go ahead and digitize them to your account, you would be able to play it on your PC. So that is something that I think is quite interesting for people who would like to do that. It's like, oh yeah, we'll push this program out, and you can indeed do that. Or maybe you find a used copy of an Xbox One or an Xbox Series game that has Play Anywhere, and you take advantage of a sale, and then boom, you can digitize it, drop it on your PC, and start playing it there. Again, choices, options for how you're buying your games, used or new or digital, is a good thing. Go figure. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Neil, who says, no video today, Friday. Hope everything is okay. You know, I do like the concept that if I miss like 2 or 3 news waves in a row and people hear nothing from me, there's probably a search party out there somewhere. So I do appreciate that to the viewers, just in the off chance something crazy happens. But no, so Friday, this is something I had been going back and forth with the family and the wife on. It's her birthday. She said, I want to go to the beach, the family. I said, you know what? We're going to the beach. And that's what happened. So we went for a few days there. It was fun, but that meant that I didn't have Newswave on Friday, didn't have a Saturday video, and then I was back on Sunday. So I had like set up and pre-recorded a video for Friday to fill in, and then I just kind of took Saturday off because we were driving back from the beach and doing some other family stuff afterwards. So it was a good time, but I'm back and reinvigorated and ready to go for all the craziness that the industry apparently wants to pull off right now. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you did want to hear about how Sony right now, not really ready for this all-digital future that they're pitching. I did a whole video on that, and I'll leave it right below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.